Welcome to Agents Uncovered, where we dive beneath the surface of the agent and learn about their journey, hurdles, and insights. Spoken directly from real estate agents that we can all relate with. We don't focus on the top 1% like every other industry podcast. Instead, we're here to deliver insightful content that we can all relate to and get value from. Whether you're new to the industry, pursuing a passion, or have recently embarked on your journey within real estate, Agents Uncovered will undoubtedly inform, educate, and entertain. Subscribe now and follow Real Estate Training Australia for more content.
Welcome to Agents Uncovered. Today we will be speaking with Rob Lamb from Kollosche on the Gold Coast. Rob joined the industry in 2007 and he's worked his way through the ranks to establish himself as one of the go-to agents within the luxury sector of the Gold Coast. Listen on to hear Rob's keys to success and what it takes to manage your clients' expectations better. Morning, Rob.
Morning.
Thank you so much for turning up.
Good to see you.
I know, we're just reminiscing on camera, and what's it been, 10 years since we've worked together?
Yeah, yep.
Glory days back at Ray White Broadbeach. Let's start from the start. What did you do before you got into real estate?
Well, in New Zealand, I moved over to Australia in 1999. I was in the fitness industry. So I was a big hulking bodybuilder. My whole life revolved around the gym. My career was in sports nutrition. Worked for Masashi, an Australian company. I was the national sales manager there, and then decided I'd had enough of that. Was moving to Australia. So my career over here was first and foremost in the fitness industry. So managing fitness stores, working in that supplement business, until eventually I was just exhausted of that. I needed a new start. And that sort of brought me into real estate.
What was the driver? What was the catalyst? Why real estate?
Well, I've been in sales for a number of years. I started my first ever job selling sports shoes in Auckland's biggest sports shoe shop. So I just knew I had a natural sort of capacity to sell things. I loved it. So when I decided I was getting out of the fitness industry, the first question I asked myself was, what's the biggest thing that I could possibly sell? Like, what is the thing that a salesperson would aspire to sell, that I'll be able to get into? And that's real estate, that's property. So that's when I started to look into it a little more. And actually a friend of mine, Brett Russo, who worked at Ray White Broadbeach at the time, he recognized me as being someone with some good sort of skills. And he said, just come through a few open homes with me, just, ride shotgun, see how it's done. So I did that for a couple of weeks. I literally stood in the corner of his open home, watched how he managed the buyers coming through, what his dialogue was like, how he held himself. And then I just thought, I can do this. This is me.
Proved you right, didn't he? You were
he was bang on.
2007 Rookie of the Year, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. So
like a duck to
wind. I actually did. I had a stint telemarketing, and I was never afraid of the phone, and I always was really natural with conversation and speaking over the phone. So my entry into Ray White Broadbeach was interesting because I went on with about 7 or 8 other cadets at the time, and they didn't have that same experience on the phone. And as you know, real estate is 80% phone work and 20% face to face. So I just leapt into it, and I was phoning people all over Australia, just mining for leads and trying to get listings. And David Rake, the sales manager at the time, was just amazed at how quickly I adapted to that real estate, and particularly the call volume and getting through and getting success over the phone. So that was encouraging. That was a good start. And within my first month, I'd already signed up, I think, 3 or 4 listings. And at that time, the market was 2007. It was very, very strong. Literally had copies of the contracts for each of my open homes. And my first ever contract, I'm embarrassed to say this, was done on the back of my car outside the open home. And
what it was running over the contract.
I literally wasn't sure where I was supposed to fill things in. So I did the whole lot. And it was a first home buyer who was really gracious and didn't embarrass me too much. And then I went straight round to Brett's place and checked it over with him. He said, no, you've done it all right. So we got the deal together. And I think it was for like a couple of $100,000. It was a unit worth of 200,000 down Surf Parade. So yeah.
That's identical to my first deal, and pretty much around the same sort of time frame. From your transition from the fitness industry into real estate, were there certain learnings that you took across? You mentioned about the no fear of the phone, being able to sell, but obviously the training aspect, the regimen around nutrition, etc. The disciplines that you applied to that career, have you applied to real estate?
Oh, I think the disciplines around that, yeah, absolutely. So many, crossovers to that. Routine's the main thing, If you've got a routine and you know what you're doing, then you follow the routine, A, B, C, and away you go. So, real estate in a lot of ways is very similar to that. Sets and reps, you can pretty much work out your whole day around what you'll do, whether you're prospecting, whether you're doing buyer callbacks, whether you're researching, doing reports and things. I think, and also, and also the thing is with the fitness industry, and I relate it back to bodybuilding, in that it's such a slow progression to get from here to here, and it's almost indistinguishably unnoticeable, the gains that you're making, because they're so slow. Real estate can be a little like that. You can take a long time to develop your skills, become more confident, and know where you fit in. So yeah, patience, repetition, all those sorts of things transfer really well into real estate. Yeah.
That's great. Go back now and put yourself into Rob Lamb circa 2007, 2008. Was real estate what you expected it to be?
Well, I was fortunate enough to know people like Brett in the business, so they gave me a fairly good understanding of what to expect and what sort of volume, what sort of workload you'd have to do. I understood from day one I'd be giving up my weekends, I'd be working late nights, I'd be pretty much at the beck and call of all my vendors, and obviously buyers are happy to phone you on a Christmas Day or on Christmas Eve. So I knew what I was getting myself in for, and I think from that side of things, I was all in. It took me a long time to develop, though. I sort of believed that you had to, work your way to the top. So I think the difference nowadays is people, go through and get their license or their salesperson certificate, and they just want to jump straight in at the deep end. They want to sell luxury properties. And it's really interesting that that thought process around, I guess, how they see themselves fitting into that kind of niche market, and understanding how, if you haven't built up those skills, that dialogue, the negotiation skills, all those things.
You've got to build the muscle.
I think you've really got to, and I hate to say it, but you have to sort of get those at the lower end of the market, because the higher end of the market, there's a lot of expectation and a lot of responsibility. We're not talking 300,000. You move the decimal point to the right a couple, and you're talking 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million. So therein lies that responsibility that you have to get it right. Your compliance, you can't leave any loopholes or doors open for buyers to get out of that contract through your own inexperience and not knowing, what traps to look out for.
So was the focus, once you got into real estate, to aim towards the prestige market, to work with, high net worth clients, or is that something you fell into?
It's good. It's really interesting you say that, because when my first day at Ray White, they asked where I wanted to sit, and I said I want to sit right next to the sales board. So, and at that particular time, Michael Kollosche, who I work for now, was still is the dominant agent on the Gold Coast. And I didn't know it at the time, but every Monday morning I'd sit at my desk. He'd roll up to the whiteboard and write, 3 or 4 hedges ad sales on the board, averaging, anywhere from 6 to 8 million. And I was just blown away. I was just, wow, this guy's got it. He was young. Very articulate, but almost mysterious. Like, he didn't really mingle with the rest of the other agents, which I sort of know Michael now really well. I just think he was so focused on getting to where he wanted to be and where he was, that there was no distraction. And I really respect that at the time. Yeah. And really what he created then, what he was doing then, he's taught and basically carried through all the agents within this business. So the the business hasn't changed. You know, we've all changed, we've all adapted, we've all taken on those sort of, those guidelines and things, and it's worked for us. But he was really the first to show me what's possible.
So we're going to come back with your permission, come back and discuss my business and your part in that.
Yeah, sure.
It's interesting you say about sitting beside Mike on the sales floor. Very quickly, I can remember a story was sitting at an auction room, and I was very chuffed. I just sold property under the hammer, and I think the sales volume was 360,000. Michael just sold a property, and he was sitting beside us. He was on his table, we were on our table. He was with the buyer. They were writing a deposit check, and the deposit check was for 360,000. So the buyers are sitting with me doing the contract, and they said, "Did they just pay a deposit of 360,000?" I said, "Yeah." So it's scale is
Still relative, yeah.
isn't it? So I guess in that instance, sitting beside the sales board lit a fire within you that what was possible, what was capable, where you could be if you applied yourself. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. And I think, so being new to the industry, I just felt it was up to me to learn and get more skills, get more sales under my belt, and gradually sort of work my way up there. I think what I did was I focused on an area within the real estate market that was, units, apartment sales. There were a lot of walk-up, sort of 3-story walk-up buildings at that time. There weren't as many high-rises being even built. So that's where I started my career. Now, the average sale price in those were anywhere from sort of 200 to 600,000. So really, my business was revolved heavily around volume. It was all around volume. So where I would look at all the other more experienced agents that had been in the game longer, their average sale prices were between sort of 800 to 1.5 million. And I'd be like, wow, that's really good. They would only sell maybe 1 or 2 a month. I was selling 7 or 8 a month of those smaller ones. So it's interesting because my thoughts at that time was all around how many can I sell. It wasn't about the price so much. It was just if I knew I was making the sales, then everything would be all right.
So your system that you created, was that as a result of training within house, or was that training that you sourced externally? Obviously, to grow into that space, you had a model, you had a So what did that look like in terms of execution?
I think when you get involved in, say, Ray White or Harcourts or one of the larger franchises, they take on more cadets, more sort of inexperienced agents, and then you've got your lead agents and so on. So I think they give you, pretty good access to training and that type of thing. It's always on you to always continue to learn. But in the early stages of anyone's career, I think you go in there and you don't have that knowledge or that direction to know that you can accelerate your career quicker through, learning. I think nowadays it's fantastic. Social media now gives you the availability to look at guys like Tom Panos, and you can see the other agents and Adrian Bowe and just different people where you can kind of just get more information and upskill and do it easily. Back then we didn't have that. We had people that would literally come into the office and do a training session, or the sales manager would do something, but it was quite basic.
So the in-house training that was done on a weekly, monthly basis was sort of formed the core of the system. Was there, obviously it was corporate once a month, that was something that you went into, but for you really to lean back on your gym background, once you understood, you just applied that, okay, it's a graft, head down, blinkers on, let's just go and just do. So the transition then from taking that, $300,000 to $600,000 unit to all of a sudden putting yourself in the shop window, to say, for the prestige marketplace. What was that transition like? Did you consciously target? Did you put yourself out there in terms of marketing? Did you deliberately walk away from what was your business and then move into that sector?
Okay, well, it's interesting because I looked at it like where I wasn't going to get where I wanted to be. And I had 10 years experience doing, the average sales, average prices, having good years in real estate, but also you're so exposed to the market fluctuations anyway. 2012, global financial crisis, all those things, they all have such an impact on your earning capacity and your ability to sell things. So there were ups and downs, and as you know, you've got to sort of just push through those hard times to get to the good times. But in those times, actually, that was when I realized what I really wanted to do. I was either going to, no.
I'll talk to you dry.
What I decided was, in real estate, you could be interested or you can be all in.
Yeah.
I think for 10 years I was interested and I was somewhat all in, but I wasn't passionate about what I was selling. So I wasn't getting excited going into a lot of rental properties and properties that weren't really interesting to me.
Wasn't playing.
So at a point in time, I just said to myself, right, I want to, like I did when I got into real estate, was what is the biggest thing I can sell? So I'd started selling real estate, but they weren't the highest price real estate. So I sort of just checked in again with my own self and went, right, do you want to keep selling this, or do you want to have a really big swing and try and sell the most expensive properties on the Gold Coast?
Yep.
And if you are, where do you need to be and which office do you need to have a desk in to make that happen? And fortunate for me, I'd done a huge deal on Albatross Ave, the property called Tidemark, for 25 mil.
Yes.
And that $25 million sale was in conjunction with Michael Kollosche. So I was fortunate enough to see him operate during that sale, and we got that together. So for me, that was probably the door that opened up and the light bulb moment. It was like, I just want to do more of those.
The memory you had to buy.
I was working with a buyer. 10 months I was working with that particular buyer.
And was that a conscious case of the buyer just fell into your lap, or you came across the buyer, or did you realise in that moment that this is my opportunity?
Not particularly, because until I spent more time with that particular buyer, I wasn't exposed to that level of buyer before, because my properties weren't in that kind of price point. So it's a great story. A friend of mine was the concierge at Versace, and that person, the buyer, came in and she greeted him, and she's lovely, and she just identified that he was looking for prestige property. So she got on the phone to me on a wet and cold winter's night at about 6 o'clock and said, give this guy a call. This is what he's asked after. And I said, I remember it distinctly. I said, what's his budget? And she said, Rob, he doesn't have a budget. And I'm like, sure. And now I know he doesn't actually have a budget. If he wants to buy it, he'll buy it. He could buy a small country if he wanted to. So New Zealand's on the market. So, and I literally spent 10 months trying to find him that. And I put that property in front of him from the start, but it just didn't click at the time. So once Michael got his hands on that listing, I phoned him. I said, you have to get through this property. Michael will sell this property. Then it's gone. It won't be a property that'll come back on the market in the short term. So, and yeah, cut a long story short, he flew up with his wife, and we met him at the airport, spent a whole day with him, took him through 5 or 6 other really beautiful listings, but we positioned it such that we knew that Tidemark was the one for him. So that was a taste.
Yep.
And then, like I said, I was at Harcourt's Coastal, quite happy there for 5.5 years, and just decided if I'm going to do it, that wasn't the vehicle that it was going to happen. It had to be with Michael. So I set up an appointment and I made my pitch. I said, this is how I can fit into your company. This is how I can add value to you. And all along I was really focused on just making sure I was going to get that desk. And it took 6 or 7 months for me mentally to remove the baggage of all those years and years of selling those other properties, to actually convince myself that I was worthy and that I was at a high enough skill to be able to transact on those more expensive properties. So
that sort of leads into my next question, because we'll discuss it again on camera as well. Expectation. It's a terrible word, but it's such a part of our industry. And every sale, there is an expectation from the seller, and invariably it's not aligned with the market. So you've earned your chops, you are a qualified real estate agent. You're still same skill set, but you're in a different bracket with different expectations, with different parameters. What's the transition look like in terms of management of a high net worth person's expectations versus what you had before? Do you apply the same skill sets that you've learned, or do you have to step back, as you say, and look at things differently?
The expectations are the same.
Yep.
Whether someone owns a $300,000 property or a $5 million property, I think the relationship is the same. So you're engaged and you're employed by that person to get them the best result. Now, you don't know what the best result is until the property's on the market, and you can go through that process of finding that out. So I think initially there needs to be a really high degree of trust. They need to know that you've got the capacity and the skills to handle that for them. And with that, in turn, you need to respect that and make sure your communication is at its highest. I think out of one thing that we learn with everything is that a lack of communication actually takes that relationship and makes it sort of further apart. So more communication, they're on the same team, you're on the same page. Now, you mightn't start off like that. You mightn't both agree on what you're giving them and what they're hearing, but I think over the course of multiple meetings, them seeing that you're diligent, that you're doing everything you can to get them their highest price, but also coming with some strong recommendations, I think they respect that, and I think that's what they're looking for. Importantly, I don't think you can just sit back and expect them to understand everything about what you're doing, but throughout that process, that relationship just gets stronger and stronger.
So your communication pattern is still essentially the same?
It's higher, it's more communicative now. So nowadays you've got WhatsApp, you've got Microsoft Teams, you've got email, you've got text messaging, you've got FaceTime calls, you've got Zoom. So there's always a medium that you can communicate all the time. So WhatsApp's a great example of that. As soon as I get the listing, we send out a WhatsApp request that they join this chat group. Everything's documented on there. So that's one source of communication that my EA, my sales associate, our sales manager, our marketing, Michael, the vendor, everyone's linked into that single communication line. So if I've just done an inspection, I'll put the notes in there, just finished the inspection, it went really well, this is their feedback, getting back on past inspections. So I think if out of anything, it's utilizing the technology to bring that relationship closer and work, really, really more efficiently as well.
I suppose there's clarification and real clear communication and speed equals trust, I guess, is the same thing too. And you can't hide.
Yep.
As an agent, there's nothing I can hide behind. The seller isn't wanting for anything. Yeah.
I think transparency is everything as
That's
well,
right.
and not just not trying to being straight up with people. I mean, at the end of the day, people respected it. I mean, they mightn't like what the buyers said about the property or what price they're coming in at, but if you're transparent about it, you're just delivering that feedback and that information directly to them. There's no bias, no judgment on that. But again, that's why we're there. It's those crucial conversations are where the deals are done. If you're not having those crucial conversations up front and throughout a campaign, if you're putting those off and you're avoiding them, when you come to that crucial conversation of having an offer in front of an owner and sitting them and looking in their eye and saying, look, we've exhausted this, we've done everything we possibly can, I give you a strong recommendation that this is an offer that we should go. You've earned the right, 100%. So, and if you haven't had those chats, you haven't. You just haven't. So,
I'd imagine that the qualification of a buyer and the inspection process is somewhat different. However, I can't imagine you would be doing a stock standard open home on a top end property that you're dealing with. So, what does that look like?
Well, we do. We just make sure we've got the manpower to cover it from the point of entry. So we're very thorough with getting information from people that come through, and we're very thorough in sending information out as well. So if there's sensitive properties, we'll have non-disclosure agreements so we can share information. But for the most part, most owners accept that when they come to sell the property, they're opening the doors to anyone who might be interested in coming through. We do as much qualification as we possibly can. So, but there is still a point where you've got to put the A-frame out the front and put the flag in the sign and say, come on in. You've got active buyers, non-active buyers, and at any point in time, they could be a buyer for the property. So, but I think an owner should feel a lot more secure knowing that you've generally got one person at the front gate, at least two agents circulating through the property, so you're covering as much of the property as you can. Yeah.
There's a statement here, so I'll read the statement first and I'll let you react to it. Working in a high-performance culture can be uplifting and inspiring, but comparison is often the thief of joy, and too much competition can lead to burnout and jealousy. Would you agree?
I think every salesperson's got an ego to some extent.
Yep.
I think keeping that in check and having the ability to be able to make sure you know where you stand in relation to everything else. I love competition. Competition is either you're gonna thrive from it or you're gonna die from it, right? So every month, every salesperson knows, and if you're a salesperson out there and you're watching this, just know that you can have a great month, and all the stars align, all the properties have buyers and contracts and everything goes unconditional. But at the end of that month, on the first day of the new month, the whiteboard gets wiped, you're back to zero and you start again. So there's always this, reality check where you've had a great month, but what have you got this month? And really that's the skill of the agent to make sure that their pipeline's pretty consistent.
Every day you wake up and boy.
The work you do today shows up in 60, 90 days, right? So if you haven't put in the hours prospecting, then you're going to have, I call it the Dolly Parton curve. You're going to have a good month, and then you're going to have a bad month, and you're going to have a good month. And that's the reality. So consistency and all those, small jobs that you do day in, day out.
Still the case with you, though. Are you still finding that managing the peaks and troughs is still something that you have to apply?
So this is the main key to elevating your business and being a more successful agent is when you say, are you interested or are you all in? An interested agent will work for themselves. They won't have a PA. They won't have a sales associate. They are the PA. They are the sales associate. And they're often handling all their administration work themselves as well. The efficiency of that is terrible. I mean, how do you find time to do anything? I don't know. And I worked in that model for so long, I can't believe I'm still here. So the first thing and part of working within a high performance agency like this, and this is something that Michael instills in everyone, as quick as you can, you get a PA. Because a PA manages your day. They manages the paperwork, they manage administration, marketing, all those other things. So that just leaves you to deal with buyers and sellers. So really, I think...
Does it also put the financial blowtorch on you as well, just more?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You're competitive with yourself because you've got to cover wages, insurance, all those other things. So, but I think if you're going to commit to real estate, you've got to really have that with the end in mind. You've got to know that as quick as you can get up to speed and get yourself in a team. So that might be for someone that's starting out. And let's look at it. Like if you're young, if you're anywhere from 19 to 25, you probably don't have that capital behind you to be able to commit to getting a staff member or doing that. You are literally just through cost alone forced to do it yourself. So you have to look at it and go, is the best way to enter into the real estate agency or business doing it yourself, or is it becoming part of a team? So starting out as the sales associate rather than as an agent, really learning and grafting, doing an apprenticeship, if you will, for a year or two under someone who's really successful, and you're just giving your career a head start. You've accelerated your position because that will bring you to a lead agent where you've got some ability to know, okay, I need a PA. This is how I need to run the business, and you can streamline it. So many people get into real estate as the lead agent with zero experience, zero capital behind them, full of expectation and hope, but not really even understanding the industry and the business.
Yep.
So that's a hard position to come from, and that's why the attrition rate's so high. That's why 80% don't last through the first year, because it's all against you. So if people are going to really get into it, then they should do it that way. And just sort of take a step back.
And master.
Absolutely.
In hindsight, if you look back at your own career, in many respects, you almost had that. You had the pieces or the pillars around you, but it wasn't created like it is in this situation. I had down here, you know, the keys to your success, and that's very much around what we just discussed there. I guess you've certainly answered this, but, you know, what makes you stand out against the other high performers while maintaining your moral compass?
That's a good question, because real estate agents in general get a pretty rough rap. But I do think your integrity is everything. I really think if you're in this game and you're in it for the long run, you need a reputation, and your name should stand up for something. If you continue to do the wrong thing, if you overpromise, underdeliver, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, all those things just build up and just make people, you know, perhaps not respect you, and you don't have that integrity going through your career. I'm so happy to say that I think my reputation has been fantastic. There's always prickly situations because, you know, real estate is just that. It's high pressure. There's a lot of money involved. But if you can sail through with your head held high, if in your gut you know that's not the right thing to do, then just don't do it. I think if you've got a high degree of transparency and you're communicating everything really clearly, then that avoids a lot of that misunderstanding and miscommunication and lack of trust. It's every high level agent has their own way of doing it though. And it's really interesting when you're in this business because you can see, because it's really clear we have a fairly open office policy, how every operator works, and we're all different.
100%.
You know, so some might...
But success leaves clues though. Absolutely
it does. And the clues are you need to work absolutely tirelessly. You've got to be honest and upfront. You've got to have those crucial conversations. You've got to accept that, you know, you're pretty much putting your life on hold while you do this thing called real estate. But the enjoyment and the thrill of getting, you know, great sales, great listings, marketing, exposure, recognition, are all things that make it worthwhile. Yeah.
You mentioned off the camera the luxury of your position right now and where you've got to with your stock selection or with your vendor selection, having the ability to say no and recognising within the client, is this going to work or is there potentially going to be problems? You know, I think that's paramount and you know, testament to your understanding of what makes you work and what makes you tick, and more importantly, perhaps looking after their needs as well, like saying, I'm probably not the agent for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this year's my 15th year in real estate. For 10 years of those, I was selling properties that wouldn't be regarded as luxury properties. But my communication and my relationships with all those clients and buyers and sellers over that time is still there. So every now and again, I'll get a phone call and it'll be, hey, Rob, remember you sold this unit to us or this property to us. We're looking at selling it. And I'll just say with the, you know, as politely as I can, I very much appreciate the call and obviously considering me to do that. As you know, I've moved on in my career. I'm now at Kollosche. Identifying the right agent and the right brand to sell your property through to get you the best results, crucial. So at this point in time, myself and this brand isn't the right fit for your property. I don't leave them there hanging though. I've got a great group of agents who I trust that do great work that I say, look, rather than you go out and try and find someone now, I'd love to give you a couple of recommendations and I'll set up those appointments for them. And then I'll say to them, if you need any clarification on those appointments, feel free to call me. I'll go through that with you if you don't feel comfortable asking that agent. So, you know, I think at all times, you just got to be helpful and help them through that process. They've called us, you know. Transparency, yeah, and just being a normal human, just being a good person. I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's very simple.
Mate, what do you see the challenges the next 12 months being in the prestige market, and what steps are you taking now with regard to that?
Right now, it's a transition market. We've just come out of the most incredible market through COVID, totally unexpected. No one was prepared for that. We're operating really with no idea as to, you know, what the future held, but we did it, and really for 2 years, my business was operating 7 days a week, just trying to make the most out of the market while it was performing so well. Now we're just in a transition of going from an absolutely hot market to a normal market. Right now, it's more focusing on our vendors' expectations, because when you look at, I always say, buyers buy with the future in mind. They're pricing in the future when they put in offers today. Sellers are looking at historical sales and information to base their opinion on values. Agents are working in the middle, trying to bridge the gap between the seller's expectations and the buyer's new value on price. So the crucial part for that is just making sure that we can service both of their needs and do it in a way which is going to get the result and get it fairly efficiently. So we'll start using third-party valuations is a very, very valuable tool, because a valuer, not a bank valuation, a fair market valuation, will give them a report which will give them a range that they believe will fall into a fair market value. That's really useful for the seller, but it's also useful ammunition for the buyer as well, because they can actually see this document that's been drafted by a third party. They're not agents, they're not banks. So that's really valuable. But at the end of the day, it comes back to communication. If you're not vetting the feedback, you're delivering everything as you're getting it, and you're doing it respectfully, then the seller has a decision to make at the end of the day. They're either selling at a market price, or they're retaining the property and the asset, and they bring it back to market at a later date. What we will start seeing, though, is those agents that aren't having those crucial conversations, their agency's period will expire, and then those sellers will look for hope in other areas, other agents, second-hand stock, low-hanging fruit, things like that. So, but the real careful thing about that is making sure when you pick up those listings, you do those presentations, that they are absolutely on board with the fact that the market hasn't changed, the agents have changed, and perhaps will be, better equipped, better negotiations, better marketing. But when it comes down to it, the buyer's still in control of the price to an extent. So,
great advice, Robert. You run a team. You're in that very fortunate situation where your team actually is part of your life 24/7. Rob's the assistant is actually his fiance.
Yes, yeah.
So, in team selection, in team selection and looking forward, if you would grow your team further, would you look to engage a rookie agent, or would you look to engage an experienced agent?
That's a really good question. I think within my business, it has to be someone with experience, because the responsibility and the value of the assets is so high that you can't have someone on the tools that isn't capable. So ideally, someone starting in our business would have a minimum 2 years experience as an agent themselves, or in the capacity of a sales associate, something like that. There is every now and again an exception to the rule, but not generally within this agency. So building a team around you, you've just got to look at who you've got around you, really. Yeah, I mean, everyone's good at certain things. Salespeople are always good they focus on sales, not on the prospecting, perhaps. So perhaps someone that enjoys the repetition and that of just doing calls is a better person on someone's team if you're looking at dividing those responsibilities. If you're a lead agent, you can take care of your listing presentations and negotiations. And if you can find someone that loves the chase of new stock, that's the perfect combo, because they're in charge of creating pipelines, new appraisals.
Someone that's actually accountable to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Set some KPIs around them, give them really good guidance as to where their swim lanes are, what their responsibilities are, and training, making sure that if you're putting someone in a position where they're working for you, that you're providing them with the skills and the training that they need to succeed, right? You can't expect them to sit in that seat and just be successful. They're learning from you, and in turn, you need to provide that to them. Me, as an example, when someone comes into the team, I do every single call on speaker. So rather than them hearing just what I'm saying, they're actually hearing what the other person's saying at the other side. And the other thing is, strategically, the important thing is to know what you're trying to do with that call. So that's another thing that inexperienced agents probably don't really identify, is they're just making calls for the sake of making calls. There's a lot more high level thinking strategy involved when you aren't going so much for call volume, you're going for cut through and results. So again, I don't put any unreal expectations around you need to make 100 calls a day. I just say you need to have at least 15 quality conversations. It's an important thing, you know.
That's great. I'm going to wrap it up, but just one last question. 3 pieces of advice you would give to someone entering the industry?
Again, it's such a broad thing, because you could be entering the industry as a 20-year-old with no work experience or very little life experience behind you, or you could be 40 years old looking for a career change, always wanted to do it, and now you're sitting in a real estate agency going, yep, I'm here. And it is very, very broad like that. There's such a wide array of people doing it, but I think what you need to do initially is identify why you're in the industry. What brought you to this? Was it something you'd always wanted to do, or is it just something that you thought, oh, you've seen other people do it and it looks easy, and then I'm going to have a crack, right? So I think definitely identifying what your why, what your motivations, what your purpose. If you're 40 years old, you may have 2 kids and a wife, and you've got to support a mortgage, 2 car repayments. So your motivation is completely different to a 20-year-old, stepping into the industry for the first time. So, and work out, what you need to do, what your KPIs are, what your targets are to actually generate the sort of income that you need to make this career worthwhile. Do you go into a sales associate position, or do you go into a lead agent? Those are the kind of questions, but you just need tenacity, you need grit, you need resilience, you need to be smart, you need to be big picture thinking. There's so many.
I asked for 3, he's giving me 5.
I know. Well, how do you put such a massive thing into three things? But I could gladly give you 10.
The thing from this, though, Ross, is that there's a couple of things that I would love to continue to discuss. So at a later date, I'd love to come back and explore those with you. We'll leave and go over, because it's got a very full day.
We have got a big day.
Yeah,
you too, Matt. Yeah, good to see you again too.
See you next time.
Thank you.